Hey, good afternoon, guys. It's going to be a pretty chill video today. It's Saturday, April 29th. Hope everyone's having a good Saturday. But nothing too crazy. Just wanted to go over something I talk about quite frequently, and we see it a lot on SPY specifically. But it's going to be tied around imbalance candles, how to trade them, and then kind of understanding order blocks. I'll talk about those a little bit more, and how to differentiate what's an order block versus what's not. But today's primarily going to be what an imbalance is, because we have been seeing this a ton, especially from the bullish perspective, where bulls are, sitting at, how I'll say it now, but an order block, right, where a big institution or a big entity is really building a position. And I talk about this a lot because they cannot build the same position or start a position the same as us. They can't click buy and have, 500,000 contracts or 500,000. They have to really slowly and incrementally build their positions by grabbing liquidity from either us or other big money that are willing to sell. So that's essentially what an order block is, right? It's an area where they are consolidating and building that position for a move up or a move down. But sometimes, right, one person already has their fills and they've met all the requirements that they need, and they'll try to mark price higher, or a seller will kind of give up, and both will work together in tandem, where the price will get moved up really quickly or moved down really quickly. And that's what ties into an imbalance. So the first thing that we want to look for when it comes to an imbalance candle is a very large candle body. Okay, so we'll go to we'll just stick on the 5 actually for now, and I'll actually take off my drawings just so you guys can see this without anything on it. So if you guys don't know, when it comes to a candlestick, right, for a bullish or a green candle, the open's always going to be at the bottom, right? Close is at the top. And then the wicks is how high price moved on that particular candle for the top one, and the wick on the bottom is how low that candle moved on the low, right? So what we want to look for is a large body. So we want to look for the low and the high to be very, very large, and it had moved in that range very quickly and on high volume. Those are the main three things that we want to look for, right? Large body, it moved and traveled a great distance or a large amount of price in a small amount of time, and then high volume. Now if we go look here, right, this was the 15-minute candle that we were looking at. You guys can see just how quickly it moved, right, to this level up here. And I'll actually add my drawings on now so you guys can see, right, because we had our 15-minute orb high. Everybody should know what that is by now. I'm not going to go too deep into that, but our orb high was right here on the 15. It consolidated around here, and then within that time frame, right, I mean, it really just marked up so quickly. Look how big this candle is. Look how much range it covered. Looks like it was from 412.39 up to a high of 414. So it's a $2 candle in roughly 30 minutes, but I mean, it was a lot of consolidation, I would say, near the top. This moved very quickly and on very high volume. You guys can see that was the highest volume of the day at the time, with no real retest. So that should raise red flags for a lot of people. And I shouldn't say red flags. I really should say just, hey, there's something bigger going on here. It's not just a big price movement up. You don't need to chase this because, yes, there's an increase in volume, but it didn't really come off of a level. What it really did was sat on orb high. This is where the order block occurred, right? We were looking at consolidation on, it could be anywhere, but really it was a consolidation followed by a big move. You're not going to really ever catch this, right? You're going to get lucky if you do. This is 15-minute orb high. You could have treated this as a bull flag, which I'm sure it looked like one. And it definitely have worked if you had taken this with big money. But the fact that it ripped up on high volume, covered that price that quickly, right? Came down higher low, double top, and sold off. This is an imbalance candle here as well. Okay, I'll go into the 1 minute for that in a second. But really, when this move ended up happening, what I said earlier in the video is that some big entities didn't necessarily build out their full position. Some did, and there was a cover or whatever may have happened, but not everybody got their fill here. It's just impossible, right? So what ends up happening is there's pending orders that are sitting here while the stock price moves up, and these are still waiting here, and market makers are not going to just let free money kind of sit there, right? Especially with how much these guys sway the market and how much delta and gamma is built into these. They're trading contracts on ES, or if they're trading SPY. There's a lot of stuff sitting here that's potential fills that could aid the market and help decide a direction, right? So you get this imbalance here. It pushes out, And this level never got retested. If we go back to the 1 minute, this is another thing you got to realize. Any valid move on high volume usually has to be retested. If you take a look here, it had this little breakout. This isn't really a flag. If you actually look at this, right, it wasn't like a 5 minute pullback and over a key level. It was a 15-minute orb high with consolidation. So definitely an order block here, but look how quickly it just took off. And any break, right, we talk about this all the time. Let's say this broke out. You want to see it break out, pull back, hold, go, higher high, right? And then pull back, hold this little level here, right? My line's gonna be awful now, but you want to see them hold the previous resistance. Let me draw that real quick again so you guys can kind of get the idea. Hold and then go again, right? And that's how a healthy chart should look, whether it's on a 5 or a 1. This didn't get that at all, right? This broke. It had this little 1 minute red candle, no pullback really, and then it kept going, right? 3 candles, slightly, I would say this is a pullback, but still no real high frame pullback where a lot of big money doesn't trade on a 1 minute, you know? They really trade on monthlies. They'll look at weeklies, they'll do dailies, hourly, 4 hour, but you know, a lot of them won't necessarily take 5 minute entries like that, but you know, you're not going to see a lot of these guys do some of the stuff that we do as retail traders. So I mean, it's not a real pullback in my opinion. You just get this slight 3 candle pullback and then it moves up again. You get a top here, higher low, right, double top, and then it sells off almost dramatically, right, where this volume increases once again and it creates an imbalance, right, to the sell side where this is going to be pushed back up, and I'm sure it's going to get sold off again. Of course, we know the answer. It was just a squeeze at that point, but it really hovered around, I would say, this high for quite some time. It just kind of stood in between 413 and 416. I think this is why we saw such erratic price action near the end of the day where it just kept seemingly going up. But yeah, this pulled right back down, ended up hitting our key level here, literally touched it to a T and then wicked off and went. Now, if we go to a 15, this is why it's really important to watch multiple time frames, because this would have been very easy to find, right? If we look at the actual chart on the 15, large imbalance, large body, very high volume, right? And we know from the 1 there was no retests, from the 5 there was really no retests. So like, hey, this is a large amount of price covered on a very high volume in a very, you know, quick amount of time. I'm not going to chase this. I'm going to be patient. Let's see, you know, if it pulls back down to this level, I'll have my orders in. And if you guys saw my last video or any of my videos really, you know how to set your bids, whether you're trading options or not, right? We know how to at least find that price where this would have been down here. Now what it ends up doing, pushing right back down. We saw the 1 and the 5. It was an imbalance to the sell side now, where this sells off very quickly. But we know though, right? It may have looked like a dramatic sell-off, but what's the real outcome that big money's looking for? It's not the sell-off. It's to get this order and this order block fulfilled. Okay, so it sells off, moves right down into that level. What ends up happening? A 15-minute hammer, right? And you guys can even look on the 15. Look at the volume. It's decreasing on the way down, right? And then the final hammer gets its touch. Low volume. Ideally, you'd want to see a higher volume candle, but I mean, still decreasing on the sell-off. Hits our 15-minute orb high. You know, we identified that this is a nice little order block here, and just touch and go, right? Really a touch and go. And I'm sure too, this might have been the 618. This might be a stretch that I'm doing on live. It's pretty close, right? I mean, it came down to the 786, so not the perfect touch, but still, right? We know that that is going to probably get marked back up now to fill this imbalance, and it's fair game at that point, right? Sure enough, it kind of hit there. I would say consolidated right around the highs, and then obviously broke back out towards the end of day. But still, imbalance, right, with an order block, imbalance from the sell, gets these guys filled out, pushes back up for their opportunity to sell at either the same price or higher. They did get higher, so that's an awesome, awesome trade for these guys. But that's something that we really want to look at, right? So to kind of put it together again, we're looking for a very large body. It just represents strong price moving in a direction, right? We want to look for small or no wicks at all, ideally, just a very big candle. And if you guys realize too, on a 15 or a 5 on hourly, what that wick represents is a retracement. So within that retracement, it's very likely that there's, consolidation, retests, etc. So if you see big bodies like this, right, with very little wicks, it's likely on a higher time frame that it didn't consolidate and that it's a true imbalance, okay? And always backtest by going to the one. I know we don't want to be 1 minute traders, but you guys can really see, man, like very easy, right? This consolidation here, go, and there's no pullbacks at all. There's nothing here. So this would be something to take note of and just be waiting for. Like I would have personally, if the day wasn't done from Netflix and coin, I would have sat here, looked at what the options contract would have been around this range, the 15-minute orb high, or just like, you can clearly see a local low here, and just waited with an order here. And then remember, last thing, high volume, and then a large amount of price action covered in a short amount of time. Right, this moved very quickly up to this high, and then majority of that 15-minute candle that we saw was the higher low, the push back up, and the sell, right? But at that point, we already know what the target is for this order block. So very, very important to just note those three things if you guys want to take a look. I'll show a few more examples that I'll tie into the end of the video, but I really wanted you guys to study this, understand it, because it happens so much on SPY, right? The big goal of a lot of money is for you to FOMO into trades, see big reactions of price and be like, oh my God, I gotta get in, without realizing that, an order block or whatever the case may be, there was a large consolidation at a level, right? It rips off of that level. You chase that price and you guys are buying up here, right? And then it sells off, gives you a little bit of hope, like, oh my God, I'm right. And then it retraces and it sells off again. But the real trade was down here, right? The consolidation, right? And you just got to zoom out just a tad, look through your different time frames, and it's hard to do at times when you're in the moment. But that's why trading is difficult, because you have to back test different time frames. You have to backtest price action. You have to backtest how quickly things happen. You have to backtest the candles, right? And it can seem overwhelming, but make sure you guys have a checklist, especially when you're trading SPY, and try to think from a big money perspective. Okay, I mean, even here too. I mean, I'm sure some people likely had their stops right around 412.39. You don't think it's weird that it pulled down just slightly below, right? People probably had their stops there, right? It probably grabbed the additional liquidity underneath that level. I probably would have put my entry just a little bit below. But you got to think from the perspective of big money. They cannot just buy the same way that we can. They can't just click buy and then sell when they need to. They need to build positions because they have so much money. And those positions are built, once again, because when they want to buy, somebody needs to be selling. Always, right? Or when they need to sell, someone needs to be buying. And that's how you have to think about these things. So you should be suspicious anytime you see those things I talked about a little earlier. And I'll reiterate again because it's very important, right? High volume, high spread is what we call it, or we can just talk about, you could just say, the body of the candle versus in little wicks, and then the time frame or the time that it covered that price action. And then next video too, I'll talk a little bit more about order blocks. I'll see if I can tie in a few bit of more examples from previous price action, but let's see if we can find a few more and then try to wrap this up. So I went back just a tad and I looked at 412 from April. Pretty good example here as well from the bearish perspective. It's not as clean as I would say, in the sense that you had some breakdowns and some lower lows being made, but the basis is still the same, right? So if we look here, we had this high of day mark, push down, we had a lower low, lower high right around here. But if we actually look at some of these levels, right, this was a breakdown, it retested the initial low of day, but then if you look here, right, this candle had higher volume than the sell-off initially, right, because the sell-off really stemmed from right here. This was actually a bullish reaction, which consolidated and then it moved up for a lower high. But what we ended up seeing, right, was this level here that was never ever retested. Okay, this was an imbalance candle. I can go to the 1 minute in a second, but what we ended up seeing is the sell-off, right, that pushed low a day. Low a day ended up getting retested right around. This is going to be kind of a little bit off, but this broke down, retested this level, sold for a new lower low. We had a nice hammer here, right? But this level had never gotten retested. Now, if we go to a 1 minute now, I'll show you guys really quickly. Right, I think the candle was like 415.57. Yeah, right here. This level never got retested. It got broke down pretty quick on pretty high volume too. You guys can see knife through, no real retest through the break under this level. Kept pushing down on increasing volume. We had our breakthrough low of like the low of day range. It retested this zone, but if you think about it, right, what never got retested? It was this entire section right around here. From the sell-off, right? Especially people that were forcing for a higher high or that were looking for sells up in this range. They likely didn't get those orders filled. That candle covered a very, very large amount of price action in a very short amount of time. And really what ended up happening is you got a retest of this section here at low a day, just in this general range, right? I think we might have missed a little bit here, but it retested this, sold off, right? It ended up getting its inverse head and shoulders, it bounced, and look how nicely this ended up pulling back up and just retested this level, okay? And then what ended up happening again, right? I'll end up showing you guys here in a second. If I flip to a 5, go to, I'm trying not to cheat. What do you think this ends up doing now, right? If we take a look at this candle, really a big, big nasty flush. No real retest of this, I would say this higher low range right around here. It even breaks down under the low of day. What do you guys think happens the next day? Right, and this is how I can kind of gauge swings. You obviously want to look at, especially with SPY, you want to gauge the rest of the market. But with this candle, never retested, high volume once again, very, very imbalanced, especially from this perspective of it making a new low. Watch how it gaps back up, right? And it pushes right back into this range, easily pushes up to this imbalance here. So we'll get rid of this really quickly. Right, and look where it kind of pulled, tried to break above. It had resistance here, broke under, kind of tested this level, consolidated here, and then it broke out and above. Then it started to try to test the top of the range, right, and then broke out with a flag and moved higher. So really looking, once again, at your candles, understanding, hey, how quickly did this move? How high a volume was it? Looking at your wicks, and then really being able to gauge it from there. Being patient, understanding what the big trade is. Like if we even go back here really quickly, hey, like the ferocity, guys, of this selling off, like that 5-minute candle obviously had a couple, it had a little bit of a wick down here. I'm sure it came somewhere in this range down here. But how quickly this sold off and really broke through this higher low here, didn't retest it, just moved down, pulled back up in this range, but it didn't really catch anything significant, right? It didn't retest any level to catch previous sellers or give a buyers the opportunity to stop out. So there were still probably buy orders sitting here or sell orders in the following day, right? Pushed right back into that zone. So that's a nice little bearish example of an imbalance, right? Let's see if we can find a few more, and then we'll call it there. Last example here is actually going to be Tesla. If you guys take a look, right, we have the hourly print here. I'm actually in replay mode, so I'll play it out for you guys. But this is exactly what we're talking about, right? We have our high up here, a breakdown, a lower high, which is obviously a very, very a shortcoming of an even attempt to break this high. You can see it's struggling with previous day high. And then if we come back a little bit further, like right around here, it's just struggling overall, right, to maintain this level here. The chart looks pretty weak. You guys can see any of the bullish volume is pretty low volume. And then we had this picture perfect, kind of what we're talking about, right, where we see this large candle body, very small wicks. I'll go ahead and zoom in on price action as well to show you guys on a smaller time frame how we can analyze this further. But this is exactly what we're talking about. And I don't know why I didn't say this in the previous videos, but think about it from like a gap up or a gap down in after hours or pre-market, right? There's a large amount of price that's, I guess, transacted overnight. And then when the market opens, you have that big gap. Almost think about it in that same sense, right? There's just, the price moves so quickly with no retest that there's so many pending orders, and there's a lot of potential for, if we just draw a chart or a line here too, there's a lot of potential orders that are sitting right around there. Right, and that's what you'd want to see this get retested for and basically rebalance or restructure this chart, and then it can continue lower if need be, right, if there really is true weakness here. But I wanted to show this. Let's see if it will let me go down to a 15 or if it's going to mess it up. Oh, that's sweet. Okay, I might start using TradingView now. But you guys see, right, the 15, complete meltdown. Look at the volume, right? big meltdown. You're not seeing, and if we go down to a smaller time frame, I don't think there's going to be any retests. Yep, no retests, right? We broke through this higher low. We grabbed all these guys' liquidity that were trying to go long here. I gave them one small 5-minute retest, but for the most part, very high volume, massive meltdown. And let's even go to the one. I'm sure it'll look even more gruesome. Yeah, just a complete meltdown. And this was a small retest for these guys to get out break even, but it wasn't a true one, right? We can look from the hourly, we can look from the 15. The one, this pullback up here, if we just grab our trend line real quick, it's a brutal one, but just like that, right? These guys, that was just an attempt to get out break even from their higher low. Okay, so that's you can see it on all time frames, big meltdown, but on the hourly, right, very imbalanced from a structure standpoint and a candle standpoint. But let's go ahead and watch how this plays out now, right? And that kind of what I was talking about. So after hours, right, gaps down a little bit further. You guys can see just kind of how the market's doing its own thing. I think it goes into pre-market here in the next candle or two. But watch the open now. Comes down and tests pre-market low, right? And it's trying to hold this level here, the previous lows. This is very big for bulls. And like I said, right, it's going to likely get pushed back up, retest this level for any of those pending orders. And then from there, it's an auction. And it's going to decide if it wants to continue to go further, people see continued downside, or if this was a dip buy opportunity off these lows. But I wanted to show, how this is really important to your trading, how you can swing trade, how you guys can intraday trade, because look at how it just seemingly pushes right back up. Market closes here, right back into these orders. There's an auction probably occurring in after hours, whether they want to establish this as support, if they want to, reject this price. But look how it comes right back up into that level, right? It breaks back down, tests the previous day lows once again to see if this is valid. Market closes at the lows here, starts to trade around this low here, this low here. Let's see how the market opens again. See how it's trying to find an auction, right? It's trying to find if there's any willing buyers. Obviously there has been. We can see the wicks on the hourly, right? They're obviously slipping a little bit, but they're maintaining. I wish there was an alt tool for this. I would say the lower wicks here. Yeah, I would probably say here. Looks like they're trying to maintain these lows here. We're just going to take the candle body. Candle close here, wicks from here, wicks here, wicks here, over here. Let's actually pull it out just a little further. I think that's the kind of the demand zone that these guys were trying to hold, and then determining, hey, is this worth buying up here, or is this worth something? Because these guys got their fills. Obviously, it looks like they sold off, but it did retest this level. And then you can see, too, just the auction of the market itself. Like, hey, this thing's going to sell down. It's not going to just infinitely keep going down. I'm sure you're going to have buyers defending these lows and then determining, hey, is this a good area to sell at, or are we just going to have our orders pending here, get our quick fills and get out? And yeah, that's pretty much what we've been seeing. Obviously, we know how Tesla actually traded going into today's date. This was all a buy, but it's really cool to see how these come to fruition, right? And this will be it only had one touch, right? We had a touch here, technically a second one in pre-market, but I'm sure this is going to come back up and retest this level again for any additional liquidity. And I haven't cheated. I haven't looked at this. I saw just this 1 hour bar, and that was about it. So there we go. We pause. We've made it to this extended hours here, and it looks like it's testing it for a second time. Now there will either be a price acceptance above and a mark towards the new highs up here, or once again these guys will choose to sell. But you guys can see, right, how this imbalance really got tested. We can see that there's a clear demand here that was really established. I think this, right, yeah, we had a wick below, so this candle close is what I would primarily use as my demand. Obviously the wicks here, you guys can clearly see a defined bottom, but it was trading between this range. The imbalance that had leftover sellers here, or a mark for sellers to kind of choose if they sell if they wanted to, but also those buyers that were sitting at that higher low. I'm sure there were still orders sitting there, or people replacing their orders to get filled to go long. There's just a lot of activity that was missed in this hourly candle here, and then slowly made its way up the first time. It looks like people did sell out and got on that secondary touch of it, but that's still a very, very fresh level. You know what I mean? That imbalance hasn't been structurally filled, so it sells back down. I'm sure new shares were, gathered here from this local low here, and then marked back up, got higher low, came back down, retested this level one more time, scooped up any excess demand, and then it marked it right back up, filled the imbalance, and then, hey, at that point, right, these guys got stopped. They accumulated their shares, and then now we can see, hey, is this going to be a price acceptance above this imbalance, or is it going to sell off now that I would say this is a secondary test of it, but I'm kind of curious to see how this works out now. Boom, looks like a big sell. But then it marks back up, retests that level, and closes. I'm sure this is probably going to go lower. But I want to also emphasize too, do you guys see how this is becoming a new resistance? Right, it used to be up here where we had a very, very key resistance. I would say probably like from here to like the top of this wick, right? Because that's where this first lower high started. So I would say we had like a resistance here, but you guys see how sellers now were able to push it here. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily bearish, but this is a new area for supply to be unloaded off of, right, off of this imbalance. So you see it pushes up, rejects, sells off, it gets accumulated, moves up, sells off, comes down, accumulated again, moves back into the supply. So this is a new area, and this over time, as this becomes more and more respected in an area where shorts know, hey, okay, I'm going to take profits here, this will become a resistance, and then obviously as you break above, it could potentially become a support. So this is a cool little thing to do, and I would recommend this all the time, guys. Go back on hourlies, go back on your 4 hours, and really look for these sources of imbalance. Because look out, yeah, this is pretty nasty. Right, looks like the third touch or the second, yeah, we'll call this a third touch, was a very, very big dump of that level. Came and actually broke the local low here, so it probably should trade back down, I would say here to here. We can just extend this out. Might trade back up to this previous day level here. Looks like it hit. I wouldn't be surprised if it sells off pretty dramatically again down to this local level here. And this is where you would expect a pretty big bounce, in my opinion, or maybe even catch these little wicks down here. But I don't want to go too deep into this, right? I just wanted to show you guys essentially how to solve and find these imbalances on the hourly, and really just treat it as zones where they can trade back to as a magnet. And then it's really up to us to determine if sellers are going to be present in that area, whether you're using the tape, your candle closes, whatever it may be. Just be able to read whether it feels heavy, from a sell side, or there's buyers in that area, and then try to find, areas of support where it could either sell down to and buyers would accumulate, or push back up to. But hopefully this helped you guys out just a tad. I wanted to show you guys Tesla because this was a really good example. I didn't look that deep into it, right? I didn't take a look at how far this traded out to, or even it's selling off down here. I kind of did that live, but that's really what backtesting is all about, guys. Like looking for these imbalances, finding them on SPY, Tesla, whatever your favorite ticker is, and understanding how the price action will magnet back to it. Utilizing that for your edge, whether you're a swing trader or a day trader, just have these zones marked out. There's a lot currently on SPY and Tesla. There's some on AMD and NVIDIA, so there's a good amount that you guys could do some homework on and experiment with. But yeah, I hope this helped you guys out, in whatever way you guys want to use this. But really look for it, like I said, I like to use it on the 5, 15, hourly, and the 4 hour to try to find these imbalance candles. They will happen in pre-market or extended hours with news a lot of the times, but you can also catch them midday, right? News um, speeds these processes up, right? If you're like in the middle of a trade and they're intraday and SPY knifes really quickly because a Fed member is talking or something like that, that is an imbalance candle, right? That's a very quick movement on high volume. Typically, it's not going to have a retest, and you have to try to find where liquidity will be at, right, for the buy side or the sell side, whatever direction it's moving, and try to find that and then keep an eye on it, right? We don't want to just predict, but it's about reacting and understanding where these buyers are going to be at, right? And we found buyers here. We understood that this was a sell side imbalance now. And then ultimately it failed. Now it's coming down to this level here. So just being able to experiment with it and understand the best that you can what's happening with price action, because it's not all that it seems, right? And it's very important to analyze these and make actionable trades off of them. So that's some homework for you guys. I'll go ahead and post an actual, I'll probably do this too. I'll do like a little bit of a replay mode and have you guys go back from certain dates and try to replay and see if you can find imbalance candles or find these supply and demand zones off of imbalance zones, and how you guys would trade those. So I think it'll be very, very productive. But I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll go ahead and tie all of this together now. Enjoy your weekend. We have Monday tomorrow. That's a big week with Apple and FOMC once again. So try to stay light and trade discipline this week. Take care, guys.